You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tehan. In addition to this show, I write for the PackersPost.com and Cheesehead TV. Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. Sean, Super Bowl Sunday coming up in just a few days. Not my first choice of teams, but before we get into the Super Bowl and even some of the things that certain Packer players said before the Super Bowl, how about a word from our sponsor?
Yeah, it's not my favorite Super Bowl matchup either, Gil. I can't wait for Packer season to be back in 2025. And for those also gearing up for the 2025 Packer season, a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packer fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packer game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. If you're watching with us on YouTube today, thank you so much. You can see the link right there on your screen, packerstalk.com/tickets. Watch every episode of No Huddle Radio on Packers Talk Network on YouTube. While you're there, click on the bell, turn the notifications on. You can join the discussion, chat with Gil and I live. We're nice people, we swear. We love to chat and get the viewers and the listeners involved if we can. We love to see and talk about the comments coming our way. And you mentioned it, Gil, right away, where Josh Jacobs was making the rounds on Radio Row in New Orleans leading up to Super Bowl 59 on Wednesday. The first stop he made was with Milwaukee's 97.3 The Game. And essentially the quote was that he said was regarding the wide receiver room in Green Bay, we have a young group of receivers who could be really special. But the Packers need a guy that has proven to be a number one already, someone who has been a little more consistent. Now, Jacobs, he was teammates with former Packer Davante Adams for a couple of years in Vegas. He was vocal how he was going to do his best to recruit some guys to Green Bay even after the season. And so far this weekend, Radio Row. Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed appeared to take some exception to Jacobs' comments on social media yesterday. But, I mean, this is the NFL, Gil. You got to show that you can play, and those guys really struggled last year. My question to you, though, Gil, Josh Jacobs, he wants that proven number one wide receiver. Is he right?
You know, I'm going to say he is more than not, and here's why. You can either stick with the group you got and hope one of them develops into a number one receiver, which some of them are capable of doing, in my opinion, but none of them may. Or you could bring in a proven guy and build from there. And, you know, hopefully even if you bring in that proven guy, the younger players, the second and third year guys, or I guess third and fourth year guys by the time we get to 2025, but those guys can see what a veteran number one established receiver does, the little things they do to get to that level, to maintain that level, and, you know, help those guys get to that level by seeing what it takes to do that. But the risk on the back end of hiring and signing or trading for that number one receiver is how much does it cost, both in either players or draft capital or salary cap space. And if that very expensive acquisition doesn't work out, that could be a different kind of problem for the Packers in 2025. So there's risks doing it both ways, but to me, there's less risk bringing in that proven guy. And hopefully you could do it on, I'm not going to say team friendly, but a reasonable contract rather than, you know, $30 million a year, which is a number I've heard bandied about certain free agents.
Yeah, and the Packers, I'm with you more so there, Gil, where there are good and bad with not getting a proven number one, getting a proven number one guy, whether it be bringing back Davante Adams or going and signing a T. Higgins in free agency or trading for someone else. And we'll talk about a guy who's going to be on the trade market, obviously, this offseason. That we're going to talk about that in just a bit, as amongst other stuff that we've been hearing this week tied to the Packers. But with Josh Jacobs' comment, though, I think he's absolutely right. You're talking about a group, I think, that is really special. There's a lot of talent there. Dontavian Wicks, his release, we've talked about it. His ability to get off the line of scrimmage and get open is very Davante Adams-esque. His hands, though, were very early career Davante Adams-esque as well. He had significant issues with drops. Romeo Doubs had issues with drops. Jaden Reed has issues with drops. Tucker Kraft even had some issues with drops at the tight end position. And just I love the philosophy where, hey, you got to defend every blade of grass. You got to defend the entire field against this receiver group, but you really need that proven number one guy who can just command one extra defender. And I feel like this group would really benefit from having a proven number one receiver like Josh Jacobs wants, and just being able to gravitate one guy, because guess what? That opens it up for someone else. And that could really ignite this offense to get back to that explosive nature that we saw at the end of the 2023 season when they got hot and they just fell short of going to the NFC Championship game in 2023. I think there's a lot of upside there in that Packer receiver room, but I think, like you said, guidance from a veteran, a proven number one, would be huge for this group.
It would be, but then, two things kind of come into my mind when we're talking about this. Obviously, number one, the need for that guy who, as you said, can open up some space for other players. The closest thing they had to that was Christian Watson, and we know he's going to miss probably at least half of the 2025 regular season.
I think half is wishful thinking, honestly.
I said at least half, but
yeah.
I think half is wishful thinking. It's going to be a substantial portion of the upcoming season. So he's the closest guy you had to. He commands respect, even if he's not getting the ball, and that opens up time and space for the other guys. You don't have that guy proven right now. The second issue, though, even though I mostly agree with Josh Jacobs, was this the best way to communicate that fact? Because Dontavian Wicks and a couple of the other Packers players had some social media posts where they didn't seem to take too kindly to the way Josh Jacobs delivered this message.
And I think that was more so, I think, because I saw the tweet from Chris Sims, who's with NBC, with Pro Football Talk and Extension, and he really took that out of context, because Josh Jacobs said himself, we have a special group, but we just need that number one guy. He didn't, I don't think it's just, and this is just kind of the world that we live in. And that could have been a situation where Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed read that headline. They saw what was going to generate clicks, and they didn't really listen to the full comment that Josh Jacobs made. He didn't downplay the guys. And guess what? Josh Jacobs was their best offensive football player last year on that team.
Yeah.
And he probably knows that he had a great first season in Green Bay, a terrific first season, one of the best seasons for a running back probably in Packer history. He knows that with a proven number one receiver, that's just going to make his job a lot easier. And right now, the fact of the matter is they don't have that. It's a group that the Packers thought was going to take a step in 2024. They didn't. They kind of regressed a little bit overall as a group. And I'm with Josh Jacobs. And guess what? He's a leader, and he said he's going to go get guys. And why not? Why not get in people's ears and try to bring guys to Green Bay? That's, if I were in his shoes, I think I'd be doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't blame Josh Jacobs. And it may be one of those things, in addition, where, as you mentioned, he did praise the receiver room and the talent therein before the whole quote. Correct. It may be one of those things where if you hear the quote, you get a different context than if you just read the quote.
Yep.
And, now you can hear the quote. It's not like the interview was not recorded and put out there.
No, it was everywhere.
It was everywhere. It was viral almost. But, I don't question the analysis itself. I may have a little bit of an issue with the way it was presented, only because some of these guys did seem to take exception to it to a point. And look, when you take exception to something like that, you can either use it as motivation, or you could turn against your teammate who said it, and then there's this problem in the locker room that needs to get resolved. I'm hoping we see more of the former than of the latter. I don't want this to be divisive. I want this to be inspirational.
If you ain't getting better, you're getting worse. Plain and simple. And with that receiver room, obviously, a lot of people want Davante. I personally want Davante Adams back in Green Bay. I would welcome him back in a heartbeat. I really would, even though he's in his 30s. I don't think it's very likely. His contract is pretty significant, but I would love that. But another guy that is on the market right now is Rams veteran wide receiver Cooper Kupp. It went public this week. The Rams are looking to trade Kupp this offseason. His time with the Rams is coming to an end. He just wrapped up his 8th NFL season. He turns 32 in June. Just had 67 catches, 710 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns in 12 games this past season in LA. And now per Spotcheck, the team that acquires Kupp would take on the final 2 years of his current contract. 2025 is slotted. Is slotted to make $20 million, $5 million guaranteed. 2026, it's just under $20 million, but non-guaranteed. The Rams' dead cap hit would be about $17.26 million. And my question for you, Gil, is this is a guy who has excelled in the Sean McVay offense, an offense that Matt LaFleur runs. He runs closer to a variation of the Kyle Shanahan offense, but these guys know each other. Cooper Kupp is not a stupid football player. He's a good football player, but he's on the back end of his career. Should the Packers target a guy like Cooper Kupp in a trade?
I have mixed feelings. The fact that you can get rid of him after one season if it doesn't work out is to huge. Me, based on the fact that there's 2 years left on the contract, the second year is not guaranteed. I can live with that. I can live with the salary, even though it's a little higher than I'd like it to be.
Yeah.
The age doesn't bother me too much if it's essentially a 1-year deal with a 1-year option. The fact that he'll be 32, I can live with that. Here's what concerns me. He hasn't played a 17-game season since 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So for the last 3 years, he's played 9, 12, and 12 games. And if you're bringing this guy in and you're going to give him $20 million, I want to see him play 15, 16, 17 games rather than having him only play 12 or 10 or less. You can't guarantee that for any player. We know what he can do. He knows the offense. I could see Jordan Love and him having exceptional chemistry. The question is also, what do you have to give up to get him in a trade? When a team announces, hey, we're going to trade this guy, his trade value goes down a little bit because everybody knows you're going to unload him one way or the other, most likely. But what will it cost to bring Cooper Kupp to Green Bay?
Now, I think Kupp would be a really good veteran presence for that receiver room. And having so much familiarity with the Packer offense, it's a similar variation with what McVay does. And there was that clip from a few years ago, I don't know if you remember, Gil, where Cooper Kupp went viral because he was asked after the game by one of the sideline reporters for Fox about what did you see, and he just went in great detail about everything, about the leverage, about what kind of route, where the safety was, all that. His ability to process information is elite. That's what made him that's what really makes him such a special player. Remember, this guy was a 3rd-round pick, and he is just a very smart football player. He knows how to find the open areas on the field, knows how to get open. And I'm curious to know, too, how much of an influence he had on a guy like Puka Nacua, who's turning into an absolute star in the NFL. He probably had a big part in Puka Nacua's development his first couple of years in the league. Now, you talk about what it would cost to get a guy. And with the contract and everything, where it's nice that you can get out of it after this year. If you trade for him, you can get out of it after 2025 completely unscathed. You're totally fine. But the thing is if I wouldn't give up more than a 5th-round pick, and the Packers have money to spend, so they could take on that salary if need be. I wouldn't spend more than a 5th-round pick, though, for Cooper Kupp. I would be like, hey, honestly, I would prefer maybe giving up a 6th-round pick at most, but I could stomach a 5th-rounder. 4th-rounder, I think, is a little bit too rich, but I think a day 3 pick, a 5th-rounder late pick, I could stomach that.
Now, if it's a choice between Davante Adams and Cooper Kupp, forget the sentimentality of what Adams has meant to the Packers, what he's accomplished with the Packers. I'm just saying in 2025, all things being equal, who would you rather have on the Packers roster, Kupp or Adams?
Now, are we including the contracts too? Like in that thought process?
You have
then
to.
Cooper Kupp then probably. Because
and the cost of getting them.
Yeah, probably Cooper Kupp. And that would probably it'd be easier from a business standpoint. Cooper Kupp's contract is better. I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. And the Packers, Brian Gutekunst doesn't like to give up draft picks, but if he has to give up a late day 3 pick, that's totally worth it to be able to take on that contract and everything. Yeah. And I think I think I would prefer Davante Adams, but in a business sense, Cooper Kupp makes a lot more sense. Again, doubt it happens. This is all speculation, but hey, Josh Jacobs is talking about needing a proven number 1 wide receiver. The Packers clearly need that, and Cooper Kupp is going to be available out there. He's maybe not what he used to be, even from a few years ago, but still, the thought of it is fun and it's enticing.
It is, and the thought of Adams coming back is fun and enticing as well. Probably costs more, and the contract is not as easy to integrate into long term. But the one thing I don't think we will see is that you don't want to see. You're not going to see the Packers draft a receiver in the first round.
No.
Number one, they haven't done it since 2002 when they picked Javon Walker. And number two is that if you need a number 1 who's ready to step in immediately, you're probably not going to get that with most of your first round picks, especially if you're picking in the 20s somewhere. So I don't think that solves the problem.
And it's funny, in 2002, when they last picked a receiver, that's when a head coach was in charge of being the GM, when he was the GM. So times have definitely changed. Now, there's been a lot of talk just essentially during Super Bowl week. So much stuff going on leading into Super Bowl 59 down in New Orleans. And a big name that is going to be on the trade market, or at least publicly right now, but may not officially be on the trade market because of his contract situation. It's star defensive end, Cleveland Brown, Myles Garrett. Garrett went public this week saying he's requested the Browns to trade him a few weeks after the Browns said he was not going to get moved this offseason. He's coming off of 2024 where he had 28 QB hits, 22 tackles for loss, 14 sacks, 8 years in the NFL. He's missed 15 total games. He's only missed 2 in the last 4 seasons, a 6-time All-Pro. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in 2023. He has registered at least 10 sacks in each of the past 7 years. He will be 30th at the end of the year. He's going to be expensive, Gil. He's going to be very expensive, but I got to ask you, though, if the Browns grant his wish and he gets a trade out of Cleveland, should the Packers make that call to go get Myles Garrett?
They should make the call to inquire, but they've got to set limits as to what they're willing to give up. I mean, here is a guy who could step in and be a difference maker from day one. But as you said, he's hitting 30 at the end of this calendar year. How many more years does he have left to give? When does that inevitable decline start to take effect? And how much will he cost both in salary cap money and in, the trade acquisition cost to bring him in?
Yeah, and he only has 2 years left on his contract right now, but they're both non-guaranteed years. The thing is, though, if you're trading for a guy like this is kind of like the Khalil Mack situation back in, 2018, when the Bears end up trading for him, and the Packers supposedly offered the same deal the Bears did, but the Raiders said, hey, we think the Bears are going to have better draft picks, so we're going to make the trade with the Bears. And Khalil Mack ended up getting a big extension as a result of that trade. And Myles Garrett essentially would be the same, where he's probably going to get anywhere from $35 to $40 million a year with an extension. The thing is, it's like, obviously the Packers should make this call. They definitely should. This is the one area, Gil, that we've talked about where they need a difference maker on the defensive line, especially in the pass rush. There are too many times, especially in the playoff game too, where quarterbacks are sitting in the pocket for 5-6 seconds, and guess what? The coverage would hold up pretty nicely for that amount of time, but it's impossible to hold coverage for more than 5 seconds. In the heck, it's impossible. It's damn near impossible to hold coverage in the NFL for more than 3 seconds on every snap. And the Packers pass rush was not getting there in 5-6 seconds way too many times. Myles Garrett would just bring a totally different element. And the Packers, if the Browns really like a guy like Lucas Van Ness, and the Packers obviously would have to give him a first-round pick, probably an additional premium pick. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. It's like, include Jair in a trade. But guess what? Cleveland's cap situation is terrible right now. Big reason for that is the Deshaun Watson contract. And if they were to trade Myles Garrett this offseason, that would create another $36 million in dead cap for the Cleveland Browns. they don't want to take out a big contract like Jay Alexander. That just doesn't make sense for them business-wise. And I personally think Myles Garrett will be a Cleveland Brown still this season. Remember, Aaron Rodgers demanded a trade after the 2020 season. He ended up playing 2 more years in Green Bay. This isn't the NBA. Guys are not going to get traded at the snap of their fingers. It just doesn't happen that way. That's not the way this league operates. But if I'm Green Bay, hell yeah, I'd make that call though, man. You do what it takes. You do what it takes to try to get a guy like that, because I feel like that is the key to making a good team like the Packers become a great football team.
Now, in the chat room, David says that some Packer fans also feel like Khalil Mack is available and maybe they should go after him. Would have been better to get him in 2018, but Mack would certainly cost them a lot less money and a lot less resources.
And they wouldn't have to give up any draft picks either.
Right. That's exactly. So yeah. I could see that as a alternative if the price is too high, when you're looking at Myles Garrett. So, it's not always your first choice. Sometimes the best trades are the ones you don't make. Yep. And, the alternative works out a little better than the one you don't end up doing.
Yeah, Myles Garrett's just a once-in-a-generational player. And Khalil Mack is kind of too. But Khalil Mack would make a ton of sense for this team as well. And he's in the later stages of his career, but Khalil Mack is still a darn good football player. He was still a difference maker with the LA Chargers last year. He's a big part of that defense that was one of the best in the league a season ago. Yeah, if the Chargers don't bring him back, man, if I'm Green Bay, I'm making a call, and hopefully you can get kind of a Julius Peppers effect with a guy like a Khalil Mack. Myles Garrett is the dream, but yeah, Brian Gutekunst, again, he loves those draft picks. So like you said, Gil, I highly doubt that happens. But reportedly, he's been willing to offer those premium picks for a premium type of player like this.
Yeah, I mean, Reggie White was the most expensive guy the Packers had ever brought in, the first big ticket free agent in NFL history, let alone in Packers history back in 1993. But he was that once in a generation, once in a lifetime. You can't get a guy still at the tail end of his prime, Hall of Famer, dominant player like that and a leader all that often. So if there are those guys where if you have a chance to get them, you get them, even if the cost is high. But those guys are few and far between.
For sure. And whoever the Packers do add to the defense, unfortunately, the defensive side of the ball, they're not going to have one of their voices from last year from Jeff Hafley's staff is linebacker coach and defensive run game coordinator Anthony Campanile. He's leaving Green Bay for the Jacksonville Jaguars defensive coordinator position. They've reportedly promoted defensive assistant Sean Duggan to be the Packers' new linebacker coach. Campanile reportedly had an offer to be a defensive coordinator at the college level, also had an offer to be the San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator before Robert Saleh took the job. Duggan, he played linebacker at Boston College in the early 2010s. Later was a graduate assistant at Ohio State in 2019, coached linebackers from 2020 through 2023, all under the direction of current Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley for all those years. The Packers also lost defensive quality control coach Anthony Perkins. He's following Campanile to the Jags as their new secondary coach. Gil, this is a bummer. I wish Campanile would be around longer, but obviously this guy's a blossoming star in the coaching world, and you just figured it was only a matter of time until we lost a guy like this.
Yeah, no, it was. And, the reports were that he was instrumental in the development of Edgerrin Cooper over the course of the season.
And Quay Walker.
And getting Cooper to be, to be as effective as he was, as quickly as he was. So, it is a big loss, but guys like that don't stick around. The only way he would have probably stayed is if Jeff Hafley got a job somewhere else and the Packers needed to fill the defensive coordinator spot. So you're promoting someone who has worked with Hafley before, who knows what Hafley wants. Under the circumstances, it makes sense. But it is a loss that you didn't want to have, but it was fairly inevitable.
I'm very glad that he's going to the AFC instead of staying in the NFC.
Yes.
Like that's the big positive out of this. But man, I'm gonna miss his fire. I'm gonna miss his quotes where what did he say when he was in Green Bay? God loves those who run to the football. That's just good stuff. When he was with the Dolphins last year, they did in-season Hard Knocks, and he talked about how butt whooping is a universal language, and just you could tell the players really love him. Quay Walker, he improved significantly, I felt like, in his third year. And Campanile was a big reason for that. And Green Bay's rushing defense, as Campanile, again, the defensive run game coordinator for the Packers, and they took significant strides as a rushing defense from the Joe Barry days. They're the 7th-ranked rushing defense in 2024. They held opposing ball carriers to only 4 yards per carry. That was 3rd best in the NFL. So just a huge loss. I really hope he does well in Jacksonville. I hope it's not a quick stay for him there, but he's a guy who I could see even being a head coach one day, especially if he makes the Jacksonville defense into one of the better units in the NFL. It's just a rising star, and I'm glad we at least got 1 year. 1 year is better than none that we got with Anthony Campanile, and hopefully people will be yelling on that defense. God loves those who run to the football. Whoever's the vocal leader on that defense next year.
They got to make T-shirts or something from that. I mean,
yeah, he was the best, man. So all the best to Anthony Campanile. Gonna miss him, and Green Bay, big loss, and a couple retirement announcements too with former Packer ties. Former Packer safety defensive back Micah Hyde, former Packer kicker Mason Crosby, both announced their retirements from the NFL this week. Packers drafted Hyde in the 5th round out of Iowa in the 2013 draft. Spent his first 4 years in the NFL with the Packers before playing his final 7 seasons with the Buffalo Bills. He was on Buffalo's practice squad this past year. Registered 8 interceptions, had 4 sacks, 8 tackles for loss in his 4 years in Green Bay. Then Packers, oddly enough, let him walk in free agency, had a terrific career in Buffalo, regarded as one of the better safeties in the game during his prime years with the Bills. And then Mason Crosby, what can you say about Mason Crosby, Gil? 6th-round pick out of Colorado in 2007. After the Packers actually acquired that pick from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Crosby spent 16 years in Green Bay. He never missed a regular season or playoff game. He's the all-time leading scorer with 1,918 total points. Second is Ryan Longwell with 1,054. I think Crosby's going to be the all-time scoring leader in franchise history for quite some time moving forward. The Packers, they let him walk in free agency after the 2022 season where he made 86.2% of his kicks. They definitely missed him in 2023 when it was the Anders Carlson experience. Mason Crosby, obviously a great career in Green Bay, will be a Packer Hall of Famer one day. Micah Hyde, I got nothing but good things to say about Micah Hyde. He was a terrific player when he was in Green Bay. I really wish he was around in Green Bay a little longer than 4 years, but what were your thoughts about these two announcing the retirements from the game?
Yeah, Hyde was one that the Packers kind of let get away, although he took his game to another level after he left, and I think it was partially the way the Packers were using him or not using him as effectively as they could have while he was here. Always rooted for Micah Hyde, big play guy and a good guy. And Mason Crosby, like you said, surefire Packers Hall of Famer, all-time leading scorer, almost double the next highest guy, Ryan Longwell, and that's nothing to sneeze at. Longwell with more than 1,000 points, and yet, Crosby comes along and gets you 1,900 plus. We sort of like grew up with Crosby and some of his off-the-field issues with his family and their health, and that, I think, drew him closer to a lot of Packers fans, and then coming through in the clutch, I think of that playoff game against Dallas where he hit 2 50-plus yard field goals in the last, 85 seconds of regulation or something like that.
Like 93 seconds. It was the last minute 30 of the game. Yeah.
Right. He hit 2 50-plus yard field goals to win the game for the Packers. A clutch kicker, a consistent kicker, and even when he had an off year, you kind of knew he had the right state of mind to bounce back, and he did a couple of times. So I give him a lot of credit, and he will go down as an all-time great Packer for sure.
So crazy to me. He never made a Pro Bowl or was a first-team All-Pro. Never. He was but he was so consistent. He was just a solid kicker, and yeah. So it's great to hear that he's decided to officially step away from the game. He'll obviously be remembered by many Packer fans, and obviously all the kicking struggles the Packers have overall had since he's left. He's very much appreciated since he's walked out those doors.
When you had one kicker for 16 years and then in between the start of OTAs and the start of the regular season, we had like 7 this year. I think that alone speaks volumes.
hopefully we get a little more consistency with Brandon McManus moving forward for the near future. But Gil, let's do some Super Bowl prop bets. We're just going to run through it real quick. Those of you following along on YouTube, if you're listening later on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, feel free to take notes. I'm not writing any of these down, Gil. We're just going to run through them real quick. How's that sound?
All right, let's do it.
All right, so these are a lot of official prop bets set by some of the betting leagues, set by some organizations as well. Over under 120.5 seconds, the national anthem on Super Bowl Sunday.
I'll go under.
I'm going to go over. It always seems to get drawn out. It always seems to be the over. So I'm going to go over there. Coin toss. Is it going to be heads or tails?
I'll go tails.
For the sake of having fun, I'm going to call heads. I'm going to say heads. First offensive play of the game will be a run or a pass.
If the Eagles get the ball, it'll be a run. If the Chiefs get the ball, it'll be a pass.
That's not what I asked. I asked for a run or pass.
You're asking me, well, we're going back to who's going to win the coin toss then.
I would say it would either be a run or a play action pass. I think it's going to be a run because that's the best way to always settle into the Super Bowl. It's just a running play. Don't put your quarterback. The nerves may be going. The butterflies may be going. I'm going to say run.
I'll say pass just to make it interesting.
Sounds good. Who scores first, Philly or KC?
KC, they'll be a little less nervous. They've been here more times before.
I'll say Philly just to be opposite of you. Over under 10.5 songs performed at halftime by Kendrick Lamar, minimum 10 seconds.
If it's minimum 10 seconds, I go over.
I'll go under. I don't know a lot of Kendrick Lamar stuff. The stuff I've heard I like. You know, if we're picking between the Kendrick Lamar Drake beef, I'm going to go more Kendrick Lamar. I don't know. Drake rubbed me the wrong way when it was the 2019 NBA Eastern Conference Finals when the Bucks played the Toronto Raptors. That guy was annoying. I can't stand him. So Kendrick Lamar all the way. Yes or no? Both teams score in the third quarter.
Yes.
I'll say no. Longest touchdown, Philly or KC?
Philly, and it's going to be a running play.
I was going to say Philly, but I'm going to say KC just because I think it's going to be KC. I think it's going to be Xavier Worthy then. If it was Philly, I would think Saquon Barkley because he's so good. Total points scored in the Super Bowl, odd or even?
Based on my prediction, I have to say odd.
Based on mine, I'm going to say odd too, but we're going to say even now just because I'm going to keep going opposite of you, Gil. Winning coach bath shower color, clear water, orange, or any other color?
Any other color.
Yeah, I'll go clear water or orange. Those are usually the typical ones. Last year, it was purple. I remember last year it was purple. Yes or no? Will a QB win Super Bowl MVP?
Yes.
Let's go no. I'm going to defensive grind. I think a defensive player is going to possibly win it this year. And Gil, what is your Super Bowl prediction for Super Bowl 59?
I hate to say this because I cannot root for any team to three-peat the way the Packers historically are being disrespected for their 3 straight NFL championships that are not getting acknowledged because one of them wasn't a Super Bowl in 1965. But I think the Chiefs are going to win the game, and I have the score at 37-34.
See, a couple of years ago, these two teams met. The Chiefs won by 3. It was a great Super Bowl. It was a bit of a controversial call at the end against James Bradbury that essentially set up the Chiefs' game-winning field goal with very little time left on the clock. The Eagles being back, I was saying where I thought they were the best team in the NFC at the time of the start of the playoffs, as long as their egos didn't get in the way. And now they're at the Super Bowl. As long as their egos stay out of the way, I feel like they're going to get the Chiefs this time. And I feel like they're going to edge them. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. These defenses are very much improved from a couple of years ago. I think the Eagles win 27-24. That's so yeah, Gil, we went totally opposite on everything. We'll see what fizzles out on Super Bowl Sunday. And before we get to some trivia and some other notes real quick before we wrap up this episode of No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Network, what articles, Gil, do you have coming up on Packers Post and Cheesehead TV?
Well, on the Packers Post, I took a look back at the 2023 draft class and how they're faring after 2 seasons in the NFL, went through each player and graded them. And on Cheesehead TV, I took a look at all the game-winning kicks in Mason Crosby's career to sort of give him a little send-off and a tribute as he announced his retirement.
Man, that would bring tears to my eyes. The Milwaukee Bucks just traded longtime Milwaukee Buck Chris Middleton the other day, and I was getting teary-eyed watching his highlights from the 2021 finals run. I feel like it'd be very similar to Mason Crosby, reminiscing of the good old days. Gil, you ready for some trivia?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, we had mentioned earlier that the Packers lost popular defensive assistant coach Anthony Campanile this week. He'll be the new defensive coordinator for Liam Cohen's Jacksonville Jaguars. Campanile coached the Packers linebackers in 2024. The new man in charge of the linebacker room is Sean Duggan, who is promoted within the organization to fulfill Campanile's prior role. Duggan was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. Gil, besides Duggan, which current Packers defensive player was also born in Cincinnati, Ohio? Yeah, I know. Tough one, right?
You know, this is an interesting.
I'll say he's a defensive back, so I'll trim it down a little bit for you. And he was on the 53-man roster all year this year.
Okay, I like that. That gives me a little bit of leeway to work with. A defensive back.
He went to a college not too far from Cincinnati as well.
Okay, based on that clue, it's Carrington Valentine.
It is. I felt like it was justified giving you that many hints because that's a tough one. We don't know the birthplaces right off the top of our head.
No.
Valentine, he was born in September of 2001 in Cincinnati, which is crazy. People in the NFL right now being born in this millennium. He played high school football at Archbishop Moeller High School in Cincy before traveling 97 miles south to play college football at the University of Kentucky. Valentine was drafted by the Packers in the 7th round of the 2023 draft. He just wrapped up his second season with the Packers. Now, there's another Cincinnati-born Packers player who finished the NFL season with the Packers organization. You want to guess, venture a guess, Gil? He's on the practice squad for the Packers right now.
Wow, now that is a tough one. Gosh.
He played at a school in state, too.
In Ohio?
Yep.
Okay. Offense or defense?
Offense.
I
don't know if he's technically still listed on the practice squad right now.
I don't know if anybody is technically listed on the practice squad right now. Messiah Swinson.
No, it's not. It is offensive lineman Michael Jordan. He played at The Ohio State University, your rival school. I know that. So,
yes.
Michael Jordan was also from Cincinnati. And then some real quick notes. We want to pass along our condolences to Bears owner Virginia Hallis McCaskey, passing away today at the age of 102 years. She owned the rival Bears for the past 42 years. The daughter of NFL founder, Hall of Fame Bears coach George Hallis, regarded as the first lady of the NFL. And it stunk that the final Packers-Bears game of her lifetime in January on her 102nd birthday was a Bears win on a last-second field goal. But at this point, Gilly just got to respect it. And you know what? Hey, she got to see one more for her team, so I can live with that.
Yeah, and we send our best wishes and condolences to the Hallis and McCaskey families. And, someone who has been with the sport of football more or less her whole life and to be the daughter of Papa Bear Hallis, pretty special thing.
Hey, Papa Bear Hallis is a big reason why the Packers are still an organization today in the NFL.
Little known story.
Yeah, I mean, he got his pockets a little deeper because of it, but hey, he's a big reason why the Packers are the Packers right now. And then also 2025 Pro Football Hall of Fame class will be revealed on Thursday night. Mike Holmgren and Sterling Sharp, they going to get in? I sure hope so, and I sure think they should.
Sharp is overdue. Holmgren is overdue. I'd like to see it happen. Fingers crossed that at least one of them, if not both, get in.
Yeah, and Andy Reid offered some comments about Mike Holmgren. He worked on Mike Holmgren's staff in the 90s before he took the Eagles head coaching job in the late 90s and had nothing but good things to say about Mike Holmgren. Said Ron Wolf's in the Hall of Fame, Brett Favre's in the Hall of Fame. Mike Holmgren was the third wheel essentially to help the Packers get back to glory. He deserves to go as well. Just a terrific coach. And Sterling Sharp, obviously, when he was playing, he was great. Hopefully we get some good news tonight, though, Gil. And for those watching along today, following along with us on YouTube today, thank you so much. And for Endless Packers Talk, just click that bell on YouTube, turn those notifications on, tell your family, friends, enemies, relatives. We don't care. Bring them to us. They like the Packers. We like them. We'd love to chat with them.
Always. So definitely take care of that. All right. That's it for today. We'll be right back here next week Follow us on Twitter at Go Packers and at Packers On to stay up to date on all things Packers, or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackerssean@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show, and thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.